Afternoon. I didn't have an appointment and I've got some meal prep that I need to do. So I'm going to be meal prepping and I'm going to be answering questions about narcissistic abuse and what that actually looks like, how to heal from it. If you're interested in knowing more about what I do, you can go to rawmotivations.com just to be able to hear a little bit more. But today we're just going to rock and roll with some questions. Oftentimes I'll do these in a way to be able just to interact and engage and to be able to answer questions that you might not normally get answered with regular therapy or with other people. So what are the questions that you have? Drop them in the chat and we're going to work through them. And we're dealing with all of this topic of narcissistic abuse. What does it actually look like in your life? How do you actually process it? How do you actually get free from it? How do you actually move forward? A lot of times people don't know how to actually be free from the abuse that's currently happening and is currently going on. So you're just going to rock and roll with me today inside of this. If nobody jumps on, I'm still gonna meal prep. If people jump on, we'll answer questions too. So, drop any questions that you have inside the chat, and we'll roll. Let's see. Put you under there. Oh, I get the cabinet. All right. Anyways. All right, so if you guys are new jumping on here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a narcissist, diagnosed narcissist that's on this platform to help people actually break free from narcissistic abuse. And the whole piece on my channel is to build awareness. How do you build awareness? You got to tell people the truth, right? So the aspect of like, he never loved you, that's a truth that most people do not want to hear. They don't want to hear the fact that the narcissist didn't love them because, well, they don't want to face that reality. How could someone be that mean, be that awful? So a lot of times what we're trying to do is help you actually see and understand the truth of the situation so that you can be free, mentally and emotionally. In reality, it's not the narcissist that leaves you stuck. It's you. It's your own thought process, your own patterns that leaves you stuck mentally and emotionally saying, well, I can't do this, I can't leave, I can't heal, all of the things that you can't do. If you say you can't, well, you can't. The toxic guy in your life, he never loved you. That's the hard part. Most people don't want to see that. Most people don't want to acknowledge it. You know this, that he didn't love you, simply by his actions, what he actually demonstrated on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to be dealing with different questions, narcissistic abuse, dealing with the guy you're with, that's toxic. Drop those questions in the chat, and we'll start rocking and rolling. If nobody drops questions in the chat, I'm still going to meal prep because I don't have any clients today. And so I've got a little bit extra time, and I'm behind on meal prep, so it's going to happen either way. So feel free to drop anything in the chat as we get ready to rock and roll here. Welcome, welcome. You have a question. Ask the question versus telling me you have a question. Typically when people say that, they're just going to put something stupid in the chat and I have to block them. So if you have a question, ask it. All right. Covert or overt? Great question. All right. So in dealing with it, I would be more along the lines of covert. Wasn't necessarily the person that was just coming out and about and just yelling, screaming at everybody. Wasn't the person that was breaking everything at work, right? It was a piece where a lot of people liked me. A lot of people were, oh, he's not that bad. Oh, he doesn't seem that awful, right? Sometimes even on social media, people are like, well, he doesn't seem like he's a narcissist. Well, yeah, I didn't seem like that to the majority of people either. But to my wife and to my family, yeah, I was abusive and I was awful. So inside the piece of dealing with a toxic guy and dealing with a guy that doesn't care about you and dealing with a guy that doesn't show love, attention, respect, honor, all of those different things, that's how I was. That's how I showed up. So inside of covert and overt, the same exact thing, they're just housed differently, right? So there's not a drastic difference. It's just one is way more out there and one is more subtle. One is more hidden. One is more just like behind the scenes in one sense. Recently noticed my narcissist has been copying my posts in social media. Recently posted I'm doing okay and how I'm evolving. And he yesterday and posted the very same thing. And I'm confused. So one of the things in that is you're confused because one, you're spending time looking. He's going to know and think like, oh, well, let me just do this. That way this person will continue to look, continue to watch, right? He wants to keep you confused because if he can keep you confused, then he'll keep you oscillating. He'll keep you either coming back or thinking about him, or it's a power trip of I'm still in control over this person. So you have to understand when he's doing stuff like that, it's just to be able to trigger you. It's just to be able to control you. It's just to be able to have, you question, think, or respond a certain way so that he can get what he wants. We haven't been together in 2 years and we don't go anywhere together. Doesn't sound like a healthy relationship at all. The big thing inside of it is sometimes people ask the question and they're like wondering and curious. They're like, well, how do I know if I'm with a toxic person? How do I know that I'm with a narcissist? And at the end of the day, there's a piece of it that I like to tell people that it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter as far as the label. Too many people are looking at the label and they're trying to be able to say, is he or is he not a narcissist? At the end of the day, I don't care. End of the day, what matters is the abuse that you're putting up with, the abuse that's actually happening in your life. Many people want to have a label to be able to justify whether they stay or whether they go in the relationship. At the end of the day, you need to be concerned about how is this actually affecting you? How is this actually impacting you on a day-to-day basis? Most people will just kind of like shrug it off. It's not that big of a deal, but it is. Like, you are a big deal. I am cooking turkey, rice, cooking chicken for Kayla. Yeah, that's it. That's meal prep. Why my ex-narcissist is stalking me, then he's hiding and running away when I spot him. I would start going in the police route of like, hey, I've got a stalker, right? Because otherwise he's just going to keep doing it. The biggest thing is he's not scared of you, which is why he's doing it to start off with. He seems more like a roommate. Oftentimes that's where you'll get, right? You'll get to a place where you're completely disconnected and the person that you want to spend your life with and you want to connect with is like fully disconnected. That's really what you're describing, right? Is this piece of I'm fully disconnected and there's not a place, a reality of the two of you connecting, right? Everything that's happening is just this piece of we're just roommates. It's like when you consider that, how long do you want that to actually be? Majority of times, narcissists will love the fact that it's just roommates, right? Because then he can do or say or get what he wants, and then he just continues moving on. But in that situation, you get to a place where you might just be roommates. Nothing might be changing or happening. You know, what's he actually doing? Sometimes you'll see the narcissist then is using you to be able to go to the next person, or he's cheating on you, or he's lying to you. There's multiple different ways that you could look at and that you could see. All right, let's get those turned on. Turned on. Biggest thing you need to understand is narcissist doesn't care about you. Narcissist cares all about himself. That's it. He doesn't care about other people. Okay? He cares about himself. My narcissist feels like he is Jesus 2.0. Yesterday when I read the post, because a friend of mine noticed he copied my words, I started asking myself, why does he want to be over everyone? Is it status? It's status, it's mindset. Like he wants to look and feel better. That way he can get rid of the void that's in his life, get rid of the piece that makes him feel not worthy, not good enough, right? He's trying to avoid this aspect that he's not good enough, which he knows he's not, which is why he has to make up different lies. He might be posting stuff to try to trigger you. He might be posting stuff to try to hoover you back, right? To make you reach out or respond. There's a lot of different ways that that can happen inside of that too. What other questions do you guys have? Drop it into the chat. Whether we're dealing with narcissism, narcissistic abuse, or maybe you're just stuck wondering, I'm confused, right? I'm confused about the relationship. I'm confused about the thing that's happening. Drop it in the chat and we will chat about it. If not, I'm just going to keep doing meal prep and y'all can just hang out. But if you want to deal with a piece of narcissistic abuse, healing, the title that I put of it is he doesn't care, right? Most people want to feel and want to think that narcissists care about them to some level, right? They're like, well, he can't be that bad, right? He has to at least care. There has to be some piece inside there. Well, he cares, but he cares about himself. He cares about what he's getting. He cares about what his reality. He cares about the story he's telling himself. He doesn't care about you. He told me he was the best thing. He was the best thing that ever happened to me. Anybody would love to have him. Yeah, a lot of times it's trying to train and condition you so that you start to believe him, right? So believe his narrative. Why is the narcissist hoovering right now? The question would be, why are you letting him? A hoover has to have two sides, right? The only way that he can suck you back in is if he has access. If he doesn't have access, there's no hoover, okay? Narcissist is always going to hoover. Like, I'd rather you believe that than you be like, oh, they're never going to hoover, and then they do. They're always going to try to suck you back into a toxic relationship because they want to be in charge of you. They want to be in control of the narrative, subconsciously like programming you to respond and react the way that they want you to. Did they care about anyone else at all? Himself. That's it. People think that, oh, well, there's a piece where he cared about me. There's a piece where he played a part, right? He showed up a certain way to get a response, a reaction, to get something out of you. But it's not a piece where all of a sudden he had this magical level of care that he just loved you a ton. No, it was all about him. Every single aspect about narcissism, every single aspect of narcissist abuse comes back to the narcissist. It's not, oh, let me figure out how to abuse this person. It's like, oh, let me figure out how to protect myself and my narrative. And if that means I abuse someone else, well, at least I'm not the one getting hurt. It always comes back to the narcissist. It always comes back to him. Hopefully that's not too loud. No, it shouldn't be. My narcissist husband was living a double life, and to me, he loves his addiction to drugs because he lied to me in my face. Can he ever stop the addiction? So if we're dealing with narcissism and we're dealing with addiction, we have to deal with addiction first, right? If he's not willing to get unaddicted, if he's not willing to get clean, then any type of narcissism stuff, we can't really work on because there's not a clear-mindedness. Every time people try to work on their narcissism, but they're already addicted to something, it's pointless. It really is, because they spend so much time trying to dig through the fog of their own mind because of the addiction, they can't really get out of it. He doesn't know how to do it, anything, take care of business. That is like he won a secondary, I don't know where we're going with that. When I broke up with my narcissist, he told me no need, we can reconnect later, and I felt like he was telling me to sit and wait for him to come back, and he wants, and I was like, yeah, a lot of times he'll be like, hey, because he wants to keep the door open. My father's a narcissist. I'm still a teen, dependent on him. I'm scared that he might kill my mom with emotional abuse. I mean, a big piece of that is it can really impact. Your mom is the one that needs to find the healing, right? If she doesn't find the healing to build up her confidence, then oftentimes it'll leave her stuck long term. Love your videos. Is it possible for a borderline to also be narcissistic? Yes, they can be all together. Who is it? It's a Jacob on social media, the nameless narcissist, right? Like he's like BPD, NPD, right? Like he has both. You can have both. It's not necessarily always that way or always going to be that common, but yeah, you can have both because they crisscross. They're very similar in different aspects. They can be very similar inside of toxicity, right? Toxicity can be a way that they both look and act and respond very similar. There was one of the affair partners, one girl that I was with, that would be along the lines of BPD, and it was kind of crazy, not in a good way. And so, like, it can be different aspects like that that will be toxic. Sometimes BPD can be more weaponized with emotions. That's what makes it a little bit difficult. When I leave him, he won't even know it came and changed my number. Yeah, you want to be able to just go, right? Because a lot of times if you're like, hey, I'm leaving you, then you're going to get sucked back in. He's going to talk. He's going to manipulate. He's trying to make sure that you don't actually leave. You don't actually move forward. There's kids, hardly any talking, but they keep showing up close to the premises, finding things to do. I feel like that's hoovering, like his kids. It's kind of weird. Another way of like stalking. What do you think about the relationship between a narcissist and the fake spirituality? I mean, the new age stuff that plays out religion. So a lot of narcissists will use religion to hide behind, right? Well, the Bible says I need to do this, or you need to listen to me, or you need to obey me, right? They'll use all different things to manipulate other people. I don't think there's a Christian narcissist. I think there's just an abuser, right? Because that's all it is. Like, he's just abusing other people. It's not actually showing up loving, kind, change perspective, anything like that. I need help leaving. I don't know how to leave. Is there any resources? Amber, yeah, there's tons of resources. Go to my website, rawmotivations.com. We've got a bunch of different resources there. You can also click on the breakthrough call for women, and we can talk as well. Because there's a big piece inside of that I work with a lot of people inside of our Thriver community. It's an intensive that we run to break free of the trauma bond, help you actually eradicate the holds that this person has on you. Our next is suicidal. Do you take calls? Yeah, so I work with women who have been trapped in toxic relationships, and I work with men who've shown up with narcissistic tendencies, qualities, or just cheaters, liars, abusers. So inside of that is trying to be able to work with the people that I know I can help to be able to help them move forward and heal. We've had a couple of people that have crossed over. So we could have men that have been inside of our Unchained challenge, the men that have been abused. That's a great place for people to start as well. Narcissists oftentimes are not suicidal. Now, that's not just across the board for sure everyone, right? There's going to be some. You find more suicidal tendency, ideation, and threats inside of BPD than you do inside of NPD. So you're going to see that more inside of borderline than you will inside of narcissism. If you got enough money, take off, get a restraining order if necessary. Yeah, a lot of times you have to have some type of restraining order just to protect you. Sure. What other questions do you have? What other questions do you have specifically about healing, right? So I can answer a lot of questions about narcissism, and I can tell you how it works and how it functions, but at the end of the day, there's a piece of that that's not going to help you. Because you can know all the facts, you can know all the ideology, you can know all the mindsets, and you still are struggling to heal from narcissistic abuse. So like when you're sitting on this page, when you're listening, when you're watching this, use this as an opportunity to be able to ask questions of how you actually heal. But give me specifics, like what are you specifically struggling with? Are they unforgiving? Oftentimes they are. Do you work with men who are married with female covert narcissists? I've only worked with some if they go through my Unchained challenge before. I don't bring them into some of my higher level or my intensive because they never work out. They need to have a good baseline of some stuff first. You can check out the challenge. It's called traptofreedom.com. That's a great way for you to be able to see. The whole site is geared towards women because that's the main people that I work with, but I have had guys that have gone through that challenge as well. When narcissist says they're thinking of ending their life, are they lying? I can't predict that, right? But they will use that as a way to be able to hold you hostage, right? So be like, hey, sorry you're struggling with that. Here is the suicide hotline, right? Like you need to be able to put the responsibility someplace else because otherwise they will use that long term. I've seen it used for a long period of time. First step of healing is learning to let go. Yeah, so what does that mean for you, right? Learning to let go is one of the hardest things. How do you let go, right? How do you let go of the abuse? How do you let go of what happened? How do you let go of like what's going on mentally and emotionally? Letting go is a ton of different things that are tied into that. Letting go sometimes just comes down to you have to let go of the hope that he's going to change, right? Even like the hope that he's going to get better. Sometimes that's a piece of it that's one of the most difficult. It's like, how do you let go of the actual hope? Well, sometimes you have to go through and you have to deal with what are the facts about the situation? What's the reality, right? Because if you're not careful, you're only going to believe his version of reality. That you're crazy, that you're stupid, that you're overreacting. All those things he's going to try to push and project onto you so that you feel like you're the insane one. So a lot of times letting go has to do with you have to let go of hope, right? The hope of the relationship that never actually even was. It's just a facade. It's just something he created to be able to manipulate you. He told me he's going to turn my kids against me. Be careful of that. You can't convince the kids that he's going to do that, but you can show up to the kids as a loving, stable bomb. Like that's the biggest thing. What if the narc is an only brother? Same thing, right? None of it changes, right? Sometimes you have to go to a place where you block, you go to a contact, even with your family members. It doesn't matter. My friend said that I should have given her another chance, and now she's hoovering even though she has a boyfriend. What do I do? Well, you know right now that she doesn't care about you because she has a boyfriend. So why don't you block, go no contact, and start focusing on your own healing? Because otherwise, she's going to manipulate you into a situation that you probably don't want to be in. Changed my number, but I still have to go to his neighborhood where I might run into him in the new supply. I lived in the same street, but I moved recently. How do I manage the triggers if I see him? The biggest thing initially is like if you see him, like don't react, don't respond, don't look at him. Like just ignore him, right? Because he's going to want to get a reaction and response out of you. So if you can do that, it'll limit some of his contact with you. It'll limit some of your response. The biggest thing inside of it is when you get triggered, initially on triggers, everybody hates triggers, right? This is what we teach inside of the Thriver community. Like initially on, everybody hates triggers. They don't like them. They're like, this is the worst. Triggers are actually there to be able to show you that there's healing that needs to happen underneath the surface. So like when you're triggered, it's actually not a bad thing. Initially, it feels like the worst thing in the world. So I'm not putting light to that. I'm just saying what it actually is long-term is it's a way to be able to tell you, hey, there's something here that needs to be healed, that needs to be worked on. What just happened? Hey, did it come back? All right, if you can actually hear me, Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me. Sometimes when it does that and it cuts out, then it messes up my audio. So if you can actually hear me, give me a thumbs up in the chat so I know that you can hear me. If you can, we'll get back to rolling. Sorry about that. Thumbs up, cool. All right. Was glitchy, you're back. Yeah, my team was logging in, and so it triggered an alert, and so I had to be able to accept it for me to get back to you guys. So I'm back. We can talk now. Hello, how are you doing? I am meal prepping, and I'm answering questions about narcissistic abuse. If you've already been here, you know that. If you're new, you don't, so welcome. Who can't hear, leave and come back. All right, what questions do you guys have? Where were we at? Is it normal to deeply care about BPD, NPD person you were in a relationship with, even though they treated you so badly and cheated or were abusive? Yeah, 100%. Because you care because you showed up with true love and true connection, right? You were trying to actually build something that was real. They did not, right? They were more about the manipulation, control, power, all this kind of stuff. So like they sold you a version of them that doesn't really exist. So it's normal for you to feel love, care. But the wild part about it is that's where you start to feel crazy, right? You start to feel like, what's wrong with me? Like, there's got to be something wrong with me because why would I love this person? Why would I love this person that's abusive? Why would I love this person that's treating me this way? Whatever it might be. The answer is nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong at all. It's actually normal. He's not going to change. It seems like he's been like that all his life growing up. No father. Narcissists will typically not change. And the reason why they typically will not change is because they're not willing to be honest. Honesty is the catalyst to transformation. If there's no honesty, you have no transformation. You have no ability. Right? That's why I like using the word transformation more than I do change. Narcissists will change all the time. They'll change for you. They'll change to be able to get what they want. Like they'll change to be able to be with you, to be with someone else. They'll change and modify how they act, how they show up, all as a guise, right? Of let me do this to try to be able to manipulate my way. So narcissists will change all the time. Biggest thing inside of it is like, will he actually transform? Typically not, because a narcissist, in order to transform, he has to be honest. Not even just honest with other people, he has to be honest with himself, right? That's the big aspect. What's up?
I'm done with red.
Okay. You can go play. I've got to do meal prep, and I'm doing a live right now, okay?
Why are you doing that?
Because I'm also cooking mom's chicken, too.
Why?
Because I'm being nice. I'm cooking mom's chicken. All right?
Okay. I'm gonna walk around. I'm just gonna be quiet, not gonna talk.
Okay. You can go up and you can play with Legos some too. Just don't bother mom because she was taking a nap with Bella. Okay? All right. Sounds good. What causes narcissism? Really great question. A lot of times people will just champion the aspect of abuse, right? So that's a big piece of it. But when it comes down to it, it's not just a piece of just abuse, but it can look different aspects. Like there's different types of abuse, right? That's obvious, but I'm trying to be able to showcase, like sometimes it'll be mental, emotional, physical abuse that the person had. And so as a result, narcissism was kind of the coping mechanism, right, that stemmed from it. And there's also different pieces where people want to say narcissists were formed or narcissists were born. I believe, and through my upbringing and through what I've seen and interacting with other people, they're typically formed by a circumstance, by a situation, by something that happened, right, that shifted or shaped how they showed up, or like what they did, how they interacted. It's not necessarily, I see a lot of times the aspect of like, hey, I could see them being having a disposition to be narcissistic, but it's not necessarily going to mean that they're going to turn out that way. Why? Because everybody has a choice. And that's the thing that nobody actually wants to hear inside of a lot of mental health communities, partially because people do not want to hear that the narcissist actually has a choice. Because if he has a choice, then that means that they're actually such an awful person that they are. When it comes down to it, a lot of times people don't want to believe that they have a choice. They want to believe, well, they were just born this way. This is just how they are. They couldn't help it. And that oftentimes is a way for someone to try to make themselves feel better. It's just not true. They have a choice. They have a choice to abuse. They have a choice to cheat. They have a choice to interact with you the way that they want to interact with you. It's all a choice. Anybody tells you it's not a choice, doesn't know what they're talking about. It is always a choice. Every single day, no matter what, it's always a choice about what the person does, how they react, how they respond, all the time. My cabinets are too low or my phone's too high. Maybe I can move the phone down. There we go. Is a narcissist aware of his own lies? There's an aspect of it that, so it's yes and no. There's an aspect of it that he is, right? And he knows because he has to create the lies to be able to avoid his reality, right? So he's like, what do I have to do to be able to avoid responsibility in this aspect, right? Well, I have to create this lie so I feel better about myself. So there's a piece that he has to know the lies, right? I knew that I was lying. I just didn't care. Like, I didn't want to be honest about it. And I was like, well, what I'm doing gets me what I want, so I'm just going to keep doing what I want, right? That's the whole aspect. Narcissist knows that he's lying because he has to keep the lie, he has to create the lie, and he has to sustain the lie in order to protect his image. You have to remember, it's all about the narcissist's image. The power, the control, all of it goes back to his image. How he's trying to look, how he's trying to be, how he's trying to show up. It all goes back to the piece of his image. It's pounds, ounces, there we go. Are there a lot of undiagnosed people walking around? 100%, a lot of them. How did you, as a narcissist, stop lying and why? So initially, one of the biggest pieces that had me stop lying was the fact that I didn't realize that I was lying to myself in the aspect of I knew I lied to other people, right? So I knew I had lies, but I wasn't willing to admit that I was actually lying to myself. Once I got to the place where I was like, oh, if I actually want to show up as a man, then I need to learn that I have to stop lying to myself. That's when the paradigm started to shift, when I started to show up different. Now, was there a lot of things that had to transition and change? Yeah, it's been a long journey. It's been several years. It's not like I just figured it out just yesterday, but it's been this whole process of how do I continue to show up different every single day, transform and grow. I had to get very analytical about my lies, right? So I had to get to a place where I was willing to just look at them and say, okay, how do I look at my life this week and figure out what lies I had and how to be able to make them right within 24 hours, 48 hours, right? I had to actually start breaking it down step by step, almost like systematically. Next, roll in there. Oh, that is a good question. Is Satan the devil? Is Satan the devil a narcissist? Yeah, in that construct, in that aspect, then yeah, you could say that. There's a big aspect that everybody wants to put narcissists as demons or as the devil, and I don't believe it. And then the first argument back of that is like, well, of course you wouldn't say that because you're a narcissist, right? But it's also a piece that, like, when I was doing all the things, like being honest now, and like when I was doing all the things, I wasn't possessed, right? It wasn't a piece that I was not in control of my decisions. I wasn't in control of what was happening. Like, I was in control. I knew what I was doing, but I just didn't care. Like, that's the piece that, again, people do not want to hear. The narcissist in your life doesn't care. Like, what they care about is themselves. What they care about is the narrative that he's telling himself. That's all it comes down to. That's like the main piece that it boils down to every single time. It's the narrative that the narcissist is telling himself. I will look at questions in just a second, sorry. All right. Okay. Let me throw on the next meat. All right. What other questions you guys have? We'll dive into those next. All right. Thing I'm still struggling with is when his voice comes to haunt my mind with ideas like your work is awful, you're not enough. It's hard to leave that behind. Yeah, so that's where he's living rent-free in your head. And inside the place where he's living rent-free in your head, you have to start combating that by looking at what is the actual truth of the situation. That is not believing the lies that he's telling you, but believing the reality. So when you struggle with that, you look at it and you're like, he's telling me that I'm awful at my job. Okay, prove it to me. How do you know that you're awful at your job? Are you actually? Or is that just a story that he's slowly, subconsciously planted into your mind? That's typically what happens. So we have to take you back to the facts. What's the reality? That's what grounds you out of the subconscious belief that he's already started to implant. He started to train you that way. So until we start changing that, you stay stuck with that mindset where he's living rent-free in your head. So we have to be able to take that and help you actually see, like, hey, if we start helping you rewire, that's what we call it, rewiring, the mindset, the thought process, the trauma bond, all those different pieces, there's a process that we have to take you down of helping you rewire how you're thinking. Because otherwise, you start believing everything that he's said or done, everything that he's shown up, and you stop thinking and actually acknowledging the truth, the reality of the situation. So we have to help you rewire your mindset, the thought process of what's actually going on. Let me grab my cups. Got it. All right. I need to get the thingamajig that swivels. I don't have it, but I used to. The narcissist doesn't want me to break up, ignores it, and even pays things for me so I won't go. Yeah, it looks like it's working because you're still there. How do I deal with my narcissistic brother who moved to the house opposite? You might have to limit contact, right? Like it's going to be the same. There's a fallacy that a lot of times people believe that if it's a family member that they have to do it differently than everything else that's out there. No, you might actually have to still go no contact. You might have to still put yourself in a place where you're not going to interact or react, right? There has to be still some boundaries that you put in place. If he's not willing to respect you, your life, your boundaries, your situation, well, then you might have to take different steps inside of that. It doesn't shift if it's just a family member. When is the realization point for someone involved romantically with a BPD and NPD person because everybody always goes back? Is it because of severe trauma that people go back? It's because of the trauma bond, right? There's an addictive bond that you subconsciously start to get programmed into believing, receiving, and staying with a person. And inside of that, the trauma bond is a couple different things. It's hope and potential. You hope he's going to change. You hope he's going to get better. You hope, right? There's all this hope that happens. You hope that something's going to happen and it's going to magically fix everything that's going on. At the end of the day, the hope is what keeps you trapped. The hope is what keeps you actually stuck in a toxic relationship. Hope and potential are parts of the trauma bond that keep you going back. This is the addiction, right? This is the Stockholm syndrome. Not exactly, but that's the idea, right? So if I say Stockholm syndrome and you know what that is, that gives you an idea. Like, okay, this is a piece where I've fell in love with my captor and I keep going back to this person. Even though I know he's bad for me, I'm going to continue to do that. The majority of people do not talk enough about trauma bonds, and they also don't help people work through them, right? Trauma bond based on hope and potential, cognitive dissonance, and intermittent reinforcement. All of those three things produce this addictive cocktail that leaves you stuck long-term, really difficult. Most therapists will shy away sometimes of even dealing with the trauma bond because some of them don't even know how to. And they're unequipped a lot of times to be able to actually help you process and actually be free mentally and emotionally from a trauma bond. Because he still lives rent-free in your head. You still have doubts. You still have these fears. You still have this anxiety. And not just telling yourself different things won't always fix it. You have to be able to deal with the actual subconscious programming, the actual thing that's underneath the surface that's telling you that you're not good enough, that's telling you that you're not worthy. All of those pieces are what matter the most. If we don't deal with those, then it just keeps happening over and over and over again. Why do his eyes turn black when he gets mad? A lot of narcissists will do that. You have people in general, right? So technically people in general, they'll have different pieces that will happen, right? You have a lot of times borderlines narcissists that their pupils will dilate even more when they're mad, right? There's different things that activate. Now some people want to go to the route of that shows that they're demons, right? I still am not a huge fan of that. I don't believe that and I don't see that. But is there pieces where, yeah, he's going to show up different, he's going to act different? Yeah, 100%. But a lot of times you'll see the narcissist's eyes go black, right? They'll go into this rage, this moment where everything else kind kind of like a blackout, but it's not a blackout because they still have full capacity of what's going on. They just don't know how to process it or how to deal with it. But yeah, you'll see that happen a lot of times as well. Why is being in control so important for a narcissist? So what's really important first off is to understand what the narcissist wants to be in control of. Narcissist doesn't actually want to be in control of you. You are just a byproduct of his control. It sounds really weird. Bear with me for a second. You are a byproduct of the narcissist's control. What I mean by that is the narcissist always wants to control the narrative. The narrative is what makes the narcissist a good or a bad person. Kind, loving, upset, like whatever it might be. The narrative is what the narcissist wants to control. So if he's controlling the narrative, and in controlling the narrative, it means he has to control you. They go hand in hand. He's not always looking to control you, he's looking to control the narrative. And as a result, he'll typically control you. The narrative is the piece that narcissist has to control so he feels better about himself, right? How he is, how he shows up. And the narrative has to be able to match the mask that he's putting up. He doesn't want to be honest. He doesn't want to be truthful about what's actually happening. So as a result, he has to continue the lie to be able to keep the narrative that's going on. Did you get it? Thanks.
I can't do it.
What do you need? Can you pull it out?
No, I need to get this off.
Oh, you need to get it off?
Yeah, that's from the other one.
Go get in the diaper bag. Go get one of Bella's wipes. That would probably get it off. Any advice for healing? That is so generic. I just don't know where to give you advice, where to start, right? Because it's like everywhere. That's right here. So inside of healing, what has to happen is we have to help you change the programming, right? You've been programmed by a toxic guy to believe his lies, to believe his narrative, to believe all the different things that he's placed and put upon you. When did this crack?
I didn't do that.
I'm not saying you did. I was just wondering when it cracked. Do you know when it cracked?
No.
Okay. But yeah. All right.
I didn't crack.
Let me dry it off and then you can close it. It's okay. Just be careful with it. Okay.
Or maybe, did you do that?
No. That's the first time I've seen it. It's all good. All right. But they seem so genuine. So the thing that happens inside of narcissistic abuse and realizing that they don't care and realizing what's actually happening is a narcissist typically has to be able to get to a place where he mirrors, right? And typically you'll see this early on. You'll see this with love bombing. You'll see this with the infatuation, the piece of him trying to make you fall in love with him. And that aspect of mirroring is really important. Really? So what happens is he's starting to mirror you. He's starting to make you see a certain version of him, one that you'll fall in love with, that's not real. Like it's not actually him. It's a version of him. It's a mask that he puts up. And that mask is all that it's there for is like, how do I do this to be able to get you where I want you to be? How do I get you to believe? Again, the narrative, right? How do I get you to believe the narrative that this is who I am? He knows he's not that, but he's trying to get you to believe a certain version of reality. So he's always going to appear. Mirroring is this aspect where he's going to model back to you different aspects of your own personality that you like, that you feel insecure about, that you're like, so the insecurity piece is like huge, right? So you feel insecure, I don't know, let's say you feel insecure about your weight, right? So a narcissist could come across saying that he's insecure about his weight. Why? Because it's going to pull a cord at your heart and it's going to make you want to be there and help him. Be like, well, that's a problem that I have. Okay, well, let me help you. Instead of helping yourself, you actually focus on helping the other person. This happens all the time. But it's mirroring, right? He's doing different things that you already do or that you have issues with or whatever it might be. And it's all the purpose of trying to build this false connection. Is it normal to hate those parts of you after narcissist took them to create that fake version of him? Yeah, 100%. What should I do if my narcissist disparages me to my son, who now won't speak to me? So parental alienation with narcissistic abuse is one of the hardest things to combat because there's not a good way for you to go back and get the kids to respect you or listen to you or anything like that. It has to be this piece where you are able to show up consistent of saying, hey, I'm showing up as loving and as open as I possibly can be, and you keep doing that for as long as you possibly can with whatever type of interaction. over a period of time, a lot of times the kids will start to see, hey, mom, dad, whoever, like they're showing up toxic and this other person is not. But they won't see that if you don't have the consistency. Otherwise, the narcissist will be like, yeah, do you see how crazy your mom is? Like he'll try to be able to pit it and make it look like you're the bad guy. So the same if significant other with BPD is female, mirroring, love bombing. It might be. That's not what I speak to on my channel just because I don't know that side. What do you think about the opinion from psychology that grandiose and covert narcissists always get attracted and folks without narcissistic trauma never get involved in such a relationship? Always get attracted? Like you keep getting attracted to the same person? Is that what you're asking? Grandiose and covert narcissists always get attracted. You're saying that those get attracted together? You just need to tell me who's getting attracted to who. I think that's the only piece that I'm a little confused about in your question. Once I know that, then I think I can work with that question. It's a good question. I just want to make sure I'm answering it correctly, answering it to the best of my ability in the direction of what you're actually asking. Does that make sense? I'm going to get out of this relationship. This is my go-to this year. Sherry, let me help with that. It's one of the biggest pieces we do in helping actually get you free of the trauma bond. Like if we don't help you rewire the mindset, typically you won't get out, you'll keep going back. That's what we do. You can go to rawmotivations.com just to be able to hear a little bit more about what I do. A big piece inside of it is helping you actually shift the mindset and rewire the subconscious programming. Alina, what was that piece going back with the opinion, grandiose, covert? I just wasn't sure what you were asking. That if you've been in love to the narcissist means that you're also a narcissist, but a different type called covert elite. No, that's false. Okay, so I'm going to say it very bluntly because I think that's not what you wrote, but that whole psychology piece, I think that's stupid. Just because of the amount of people, like at this point, I've met with over 4,000 clients, right? I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of women to break them free. They're not these latent narcissists that are attracted to narcissists. That's a bunch of bullshit. And the psychology that's behind that is ridiculous because it's not people that are narcissistic in nature, right? They're not showing up narcissistic. In fact, they're just confused. They're lost. And oftentimes what I see, so in answering your question, the other piece I would say with it, the reason why people get attracted to narcissists and the reason why people keep oscillating back and forth to narcissists is typically two things. One, they don't know who they are. And two, they have no healthy boundaries. And as a result, they keep doing it over and over and over again. Now, when I say that, 50% of the people are like, no, that's not true. I did have healthy boundaries. Well, if you did, you wouldn't have got sucked in. That's just the reality, right? A person with healthy boundaries actually says no. They say no, and then the person isn't allowed to cross a line because that boundary is for themselves. I'm not going to involve myself in this type of relationship. I'm not going to be with a guy who cheats. I'm not going to be with this person who does this, right? That's what a boundary actually is. But too many times people are looking at boundaries being these rules and regulations, and they're like, well, I tried to enforce a boundary and I couldn't enforce a boundary. Well, that meant that you didn't exercise your ability to be able to leave, walk out, like do different things like that, because the enforcement of the boundary is not you enforcing a rule or a regulation on another person. It's you living in your truth. It's you actually showing up for you. So there's a big aspect here inside the growth and development that has to happen of like, hey, people that get attracted to narcissists consistently, people that get attracted to narcissists don't know who they are, don't have healthy boundaries. I can tell I didn't respect my boundaries when I stopped sleeping because you wanted to be awake at 5 a.m. and stopped doing my things for physics. Yeah, 100%. And it's a piece too of like, it's not even that you didn't respect your boundaries. We actually take it a step further. You didn't respect you. That's really what it comes down to. There's a piece of you that didn't respect you. You're like, I want this, but I don't respect myself enough to be able to say no. Instead, I'm going to put someone else above me, or I'm going to put someone else in front of me, and as a result, I'm going to sacrifice my own needs for the greater good or to avoid conflict, whatever it might be. But what it comes down to is self-respect. You actually didn't respect yourself, which is what brought you to this problem to start off with. Hopefully that makes sense. These are really good questions. What's the best way to co-parent with a narcissist that breadcrumbs you constantly, then turns it around on you when you ask for answers? How should a person handle that? One second. So, inside the big question of co-parenting, one of the aspects you need to understand is there is no such thing as co-parenting with a narcissist. That's just the reality. Now, doesn't mean you can't do it. I'm just saying it's not a thing. What the thing actually is called parallel parenting. Parallel parenting is where you have one life, he has one life, and the two of you don't really crisscross, right? You have to be able to live your life apart from him, and you have to be able to live your life separate from him while you swap kids, and the kids live two different lives. Is that the best thing ever? Is it fun? No. Is it easy? No. Is it effective? Yeah. Parallel parenting is a piece where, let's say the kids have a doctor's appointment. It falls on a day that you have the kids, means you take the kids to the doctor's appointment, he doesn't go. It falls on a day when he has the kids, means he takes the kids to the doctor's appointment, you don't go. Now, can that be difficult? Yeah, 100%. Doesn't mean it's easy. I'm not saying any of this is easy. What I'm saying is like, hey, here's some of the most effective strategies that we've seen, that we've worked with hundreds of clients to be able to help them live a life that's not triggered, that's not trauma bonded, and that's not stuck inside of the toxic relationship or inside the abuse. It comes down to a piece of saying, hey, I'm going to be able to be separate, right? And so that oftentimes is going to be with communication, right? Making sure that you communicate separately from him. You have third-party communication. You make sure all your communication happens with an app or through a third party or through something that's going to help you see, hey, when I do this, it's going to help me actually work through this so that I don't get triggered or I don't have this. We're always trying to install buffers. If you install buffers in your life, it helps you deal with the toxic relationship on a whole nother level. The hard part is a lot of times people won't have healthy buffers in their life to block them from the narcissist. I got one of your chicken done, and I realized the chicken and doing all this in the lab was too much. So I did not do the rest, but they're there. They just haven't pulled out yet. I put that on it, and then I was like, I'm not going to put any more because I wasn't sure what else to put on. Cool. Well, then I only half scooped it. Yeah. It's done, I just haven't pulled it out. And then there's more in there. They just need.
She slept like 20 minutes.
She's still up? Are they playing?
Not like he did to me.
Hopefully.
But I understand the
Okay. Alright. This has nothing to do with this live, but is wondering why he's still love bombing her over a year later. Didn't know love bombing lasted that long. So oftentimes what you're going to see is you're going to see the show that happens after he leaves you and goes to be with another person. This is where you get out the popcorn and you watch the show. But the problem is watching the show doesn't help you heal, right? So I'm answering your question, but I'm not answering your question. The first reason why I'm not directly answering it is because you have to see and you have to understand the reality is you're watching. You're watching what he's doing with the next person. Now, that is not going to help you heal long term. It's not. There's not a piece of you watching and questioning and wondering all of those different questions that's actually going to help you heal and transform your life. Instead, it's going to leave you stuck. It's going to leave you confused. It's going to leave you frustrated. Okay? Now, inside of all of that, the biggest piece that I'm going to tell you is you don't even know the love bombing that is or isn't happening because you're not in the relationship. Right? Imagine when you look back on your relationship with him, there's probably different times that other people thought that it was the best relationship ever. Why? Because sometimes you told them that, right? Even though it wasn't. Sometimes they had that impression based on what he would show them. Okay? This has nothing to do, yeah. So like inside of that, like the whole love bombing piece, like you have to understand, one, you're watching. So that doesn't help when you're watching him love bomb someone else because it means you're not healing. And then two, inside of it, you don't know what's going on. He can do anything in public. He can do anything on social media, right? To be able to disguise or like have you believe a certain reality. Can you talk a bit about what covert narcissists might experience internally when engaged in sadistic acts? Right now, off the top of my head, I don't have a lot of context and I don't have a lot of stuff to be able to say, hey, this is what it is or what it isn't without sitting down and thinking on it. So that one, I am not 100% sure, okay? Not trying to avoid it, I just don't have a good answer for you right now.
Dad, do you love it?
Whoa, that looks so cool. Is that a cat?
I think it's a cat or a puppy.
Or a puppy?
There's some puppies like this, some puppies don't like this.
Oh, I bet you it's a cat because they always pretend to let like fish. Is it a cat getting in a fishbowl?
Yeah.
That's funny. Good job. Can you talk a bit about what a covert narcissist might experience internally? Yeah, I don't have a good. So are you talking about like he's like doing something sadistic to someone else? He's doing something sadistic to himself? Like, you're gonna have to give me a little bit more context as best you can. Sadistic can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. So that I'm not exactly sure where you're asking, where you're coming from. What other questions do you guys have inside of narcissistic abuse? Can you just throw it in the trash for me?
I can't because.
Do you as a recovering narcissist have deep feelings? Did you develop compassion, love? Everybody's capable of love. It's just if they're going to compartmentalize it. Compassion and empathy sometimes are a little bit different, right? So there's aspects that a lot of narcissists have empathy, but they're not willing to actually engage with it because it means they'll have to actually admit that there's something wrong with them, or they'll have to admit that there's something that they don't want to admit to, right? It means that they cause an issue or a problem. There's a lot of different aspects to it. Would I say that I've grown inside of cognitive empathy? 100%. Like that's a big piece that I understand, can realize, can work through a lot of different things like that now. And love can definitely happen. And that's a piece that I would say I have and I engage with. Love can't happen when you have ego that's in the way, right? Like ego is the big love blocker. So like when you're in a relationship and you're trying to be able to figure out like, why can't this person love me? Well, it's because his ego is too big. It doesn't actually let him even access you. That's a big aspect of it. Are narcissist relationship bound to end, or can they be with the same person forever? You can be with the same person forever if you're willing to be abused or if he's willing to be honest and transform. That's really it. Like, otherwise it's like, how much shit are you going to take for how long? Or is he actually going to change and develop? If he's not, then you have to decide. Am I going to stay in this? Is this the reality? Is this the life that I want long term? When you say some and he's in his truck and he calls me, I say the wrong thing and saw gaslighting and talking over me. What's the best way to deal with false accusations or being told that I'm the narcissist, not him? Ignore it and live out your own truth. Like, okay, that's what you believe, right? Otherwise, you're going to spend so much time. Like, this is a really big key thing that you need to understand. Otherwise, you're going to spend so much time arguing with crazy. Too many of you on here are going to argue with crazy for way too long. You're going to try to justify. No, I'm not a narcissist. You're going to try to justify. I wasn't lying. I didn't cheat. I didn't do this. Well, you're spending a ton of time trying to justify something you didn't do. He knows you didn't do it, which is why he's accusing you of it. Like, he's probably already done it or doing the thing that he's accusing you of, right? Because he knows, and he's trying to make sure that you don't take the time to actually figure out all the lies and manipulation that he's currently doing. Narcissists project. They put stuff onto you. So that's a big thing that a lot of times will happen. Biggest thing when handling accusations, stop arguing with crazy. Many of you guys are going to argue with crazy, and it's because you need his validation to be able to prove a point. You need his validation to be able to justify that you're not crazy. But you have to realize he's the one that made you crazy to start off with. So why do we need his validation? It's a big piece that many people will struggle with. Why do narcissists always gaslight people with the things they said or did? Oftentimes it's to maintain the control and the narrative of the story. He has to be able to keep whatever story that he's put in place. So gaslighting is one of the easiest ways of like, no, I didn't do this. This is what I did, whatever it might be. Gaslighting is one of the easiest ways to be able to control the narrative. That's what he's typically trying to do and what he's trying to focus on. It's all about controlling the narrative. How do narcissists have big egos if they have such low self-esteem? So the ego is the big thing that they have to be able to try to compensate for, okay? So like ego's in the way of like, I won't tell you the truth, right? Because of my ego, I'm gonna make sure that I only view me through whatever lens, whatever story that I'm telling myself, right? So it's not just a piece of like, oh, ego, he's like prideful or full of himself. A lot of narcissists have that tendency and that ideology there, but just the ego is also a piece that's blocking, right? The ego is a piece that's blocking him from actually showing up in the way that he says he wants to show up or he tries to show up, but he's not actually willing to be honest, right? Honesty is the big thing. If there's not honesty, then there's not this change or development that can actually happen. The low self-esteem, everything else, that controlling the narrative, that's all built there to be able to combat the low self-esteem, to be able to combat the lack of worth, value that he knows is there, right? Because of how he's acting, because of how he's incongruent. He just doesn't want to admit it. He doesn't want to deal with it. Narcissists are walking contradictions. They're constantly looking for new supply. Yeah, get married, have kids, which is long-term, so they expect that. Yeah, 100%. They're always moving back and forth. Yeah, I'm a narcissist, and I'm on this channel to help people actually understand. I work with hundreds of women to actually help them break free from narcissistic abuse, give them clarity, give them closure about their relationship, show them from an honest perspective of, hey, this is what I've done, this is how I lived, and as a result, you help understand what you've actually been through or what he's done to you. He told me he was a narcissist and he was good at what he does. Yeah, a lot of times they'll be very upfront. Ego isn't confidence, they can be egotistical and insecure. Yeah, 100%. Sarah, you're 100% right. Do you think society has failed us in the education of psychology and narcissism? I think society has failed in a lot of areas. In psychology, a lot of times there's a lot of avoidance of root causes and pieces that could actually shift mindsets faster. But because a lot of our society and psychology is based on money and based on how they can diagnose or how they can actually get people to be on subscriptions or like signing up for like meds and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. That's why you'll see a lot of therapists that won't even work with narcissists. Why? Because they're like, well, it's a done deal. It can't work with it, can't fix it. Well, they also can't prescribe something that's going to like help fill their pockets too. But society has failed in the aspect of narcissism, not just because of psychology. It's failed in the aspect of narcissism in its structure of the family. It's really what it is. If you want to have more narcissists in the world, have more broken families. Have more men that do not lead their families. Have more men that do not stand up honest, vulnerable, empathetic, and showing other men how to do that, and you'll get more narcissists. Right? Because there's not an opportunity for the next generation to be taught how to actually live their life non-narcissistically. You see a lot of abuse, and you see a lot of abusers that come out of families that have been split apart, of families that failed, families that were in abusive relationships, right? You want to shift how the actual relationships happen long-term. You want to shift narcissism. It's going to happen with the family. It's not going to happen with psychology getting redone or figured out. Is that going to help? Sure, it'll help bring awareness. It's not going to help fix the problem. Why do narcissists hate women that are independent? They don't necessarily hate women that are independent. They hate the story that tells them that they're not good enough or that it brings out their insecurities, right? So a woman that's independent can be something that the narcissist appears to hate because it's a challenge. It's a piece that is challenging up against him. This person looks better, acts better, makes more money than me. Like all of those are different triggers for a narcissist to feel insecure about. So as a result, they might come across as hateful. They might come across as degrading. They might try to do character assassination, right? Because they're trying to be able to put this person down so they can feel better about themselves. Why do narcissists try to destroy after the end of the relationship and then they hack accounts and act out? All it is control the narrative. What made you realize you were a narcissist? What made you decide to look for help? The biggest piece was to understand that if I wanted any change in my life, it was going to have to come from me. And if I wanted to be a man, then I had to stop lying to myself. I knew I lied to other people, but I didn't want to admit that I lied to myself. Once I started to acknowledge that and start to work on the lies, everything else started to fall into place. Big piece inside of it. There's not necessarily this like cure-all for a narcissist or like, hey, do these 5 steps. But one of the biggest pieces inside of it is honesty. Right? If a narcissist is not willing to get honest about what they've done, who they are, but not even honest to other people, honest to themselves, there's not really any hope for like change. So the biggest piece that combats it, and even like the guys that I work with are that are narcissistic, like in working with a small group of guys that have raised their hand and be like, hey, I want help. One of the pieces, we have to teach them how to be honest, how to process their emotions, how to process their feelings, how to actually be honest to themselves and other people. If they're not honest, nothing shifts, nothing changes, nothing happens. So honesty is one of the biggest things that has to shift in order for there to be any transformation, any hope of transformation at all. Can't do that. Well, I'm gonna go here. Great questions. I got an insight while broke up with a narcissist. I ended up in love with him because of he fed my narcissistic part feeling with I'm so good and exclusive. That perfect guy chose me to be with. So that's not necessarily a narcissistic piece, right? You're labeling that piece of you as narcissistic. How is that narcissistic, right? You're actually just like feeding it validation, right? Which means you might have a piece that you weren't validated as a child or you weren't validated in other relationships. So you don't have healthy self-love. So you're looking for other people to build you up. Can you answer my last question before I go? He told a mutual friend of ours, if I ever mentioned him, let him know because he likes the ammo. What does that mean? I don't really know. Oh, that just means you're thinking about him. That just means that he's on your mind. It just means he still has control of you. Narcissism caused by childhood trauma. Yes, typically, but there's multiple types. It could be emotional neglect, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. It doesn't have to necessarily be just like one type of trauma. Will covert narcissists treat a wife worse when they have new supply? Most narcissists will treat anybody worse when they have a new supply. Or they'll treat them better to be able to get what they want. Oh. All right. I got to wrap up because I got to finish up meal prep and get a couple things done for the day. Y'all have had some really great questions. Inside of all of this, if you're still feeling stuck, if you're still feeling trapped, I want to be able to have you actually see a video that I have that talks about 3 mistakes you might be doing in the toxic relationship already. So I want you to go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough, or once this live's done, you can drop the comment breakthrough and I'll respond to it. Because inside of this, you're typically making 3 mistakes by being with a toxic guy that leaves you stuck and leaves you trapped in a toxic relationship, oscillating the same cycle over and over and over again. If I can help you with that, go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough, watch the video that actually shows you there's three different things that you're probably doing that's keeping you trapped, that's keeping you stuck, that's actually not helping you break free, that you think might be helping you break free, or that's just keeping you stuck. If that's you today, and if any of this resonated with you in this live today, go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough just to be able to learn more, fill out an application. We can sit down, we can have a free call just to be able to talk, build a plan for you to heal, grow, and develop who you are and actually be free. If I can help with that, go there.